Do you believe in angels? I'm not talking about those chubby cherubs in oil paintings or the sweet old neighbor who shows up with cookies when you move in next door. Not even that little girl of yours you call my little angel when she stumbles into your room after a nightmare. No, I'm talking about the real deal. Those angels we've heard of and read about since we were young. The kind that might actually be assigned to you from the moment you're born. The one that watches, guides, waits, cheers us on, hoping we finally get it right. And, if you're really lucky, intervenes. You probably felt it before, that strange pull in your gut. The voice without a voice that told you to wait one more second before pulling out at the light, just before that kid on a bike zipped into the street. Or that sense of dread you couldn't explain when you turned down the wrong hallway, only to realize later how close you came to something terrible. Coincidence? Maybe. Maybe not. I think I met mine, my guardian angel, when I really needed some help. Spoiler alert. Before you roll your eyes and expect some absurd resolution at the end of the story about aliens or dreams or it was all in my head, let me stop you right there. This isn't that kind of story. There's no gimmick at the conclusion of my tale. No clever sleight of hand. Just the truth as I experienced it. So if this is not what you want to read, it's okay. Move along. Nothing to see here. It's not a long story, but even though this happened over half my life ago, I remember it like it was yesterday. You can decide for yourself if it was really an angel, a trick of the mind, or just a brush with the unknown. The ending won't come with a punchline or weird twist giving you closure. There'll be just a question in your mind. Still curious? Then turn the page and find out what happened. Living in the LA sprawl of Southern California, I was no stranger to gridlock traffic. Even back in the early 80s, before the freeways became full-blown rivers of metal and frustration, it was still wild enough to test your nerves. Early that particular evening, I was on my way to a critical meeting, one I couldn't afford to miss, dodging lane hoppers and speeding sedans as I threaded through the lines of cars. The clock was ticking towards 6 o'clock, and I thought I'd timed everything just right. Dinner had been early. By the time I kissed them all goodbye, my wife was already clearing the table with the kids buried in their homework. I slid into the driver's seat, turned on the radio, and headed for the freeway with my brain razor-focused on the pitch I needed to give. Everything was smooth, for a while. Then I saw it. A glowing sea of brake lights stretched out across the horizon, pulsating like a heartbeat made of red. I instinctively glanced down at my watch, 5:15 p.m. I was cutting it close, but still had more than a fighting chance. That is, if this jam didn't grind the entire freeway to a complete halt. You know that instant jolt of adrenaline you get when plans start slipping out of your control? My foot hovered over the brake, my heart kicked up a gear, and my mind started staging disaster scenarios like a Broadway director on caffeine. And here's the kicker. This was before the cell phone revolution. No texting ahead, no Waze, no quick calls from the car to say I'm stuck. Unless I felt like playing freeway roulette to find a payphone at a gas station, I was flying blind and silent. The traffic inched forward like molasses in January. I clicked over to the all-news station, praying for a traffic update. And then, right on cue, the anchor came on. A major accident reported on the 10 westbound. Several lanes shut down. Expect significant delays. Great. I was heading right for it. I scanned the packed road ahead. I'd already missed the last off-ramp, typical, and the next one was still a good mile out. The only glimmer of hope was a split in the freeway just up ahead, the 210. It would take me north before turning west and then connect me to the I-5 going south, getting me back on track. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. I flicked on my blinker and started edging toward the far right lane. And that's when it happened. A motorcycle shot past me, close enough to rattle my side mirror. The rider offered me an impolite gesture like it was a part of his handlebars. vanishing between the cars in a blur of chrome and leather. "Nice," I muttered under my breath, checking my mirror again. The driver to my right waved me over, and with more caution than need for vengeance, I slipped into the lane, my pulse still skipping from the encounter. Half a mile, that's all I needed, half a mile, and I'd be free of this snarl, taking a gamble on the state of the other freeways. But something about the way that biker flew past me, it stuck in my head, like a warning, like a ripple in the air. The freeway off-ramp was coming up, and as soon as I veered onto the transition ramp, I felt my shoulders drop half an inch. This new freeway wasn't empty, but compared to what I'd just been through, it felt like a gift. The traffic was steady, flowing, not choking every lane with frustration. No angry horns, no creeping gridlock. For the first time in 20 minutes, I believed I just might make it on time. That euphoric feeling lasted about 15 seconds. Then I heard it. A sharp, rhythmic click, 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 like a metallic woodpecker under the hood. My heart sank. No, not now. This wasn't new. That sound had been coming and going for a couple of weeks. It was the kind of thing you promise yourself you'll deal with soon. But soon never quite shows up when you've got work deadlines, bills, kids' science projects, a leaking dishwasher, and a checkbook that winces at the thought of a mechanic. And now, right here, when I was finally making up for lost time, my engine decided to stage a protest. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, muttering, "Come on, not now, please, not now." The noise got worse. Then the check engine light glowed like a smug little devil on the dashboard, a glowing reminder that I was no longer in control. I scanned ahead. Yes, a big gas station was perched just off one of the freeway exits up ahead. It was one of those older-style places with a dozen pumps and uniformed attendants who still walked out with a squeegee and a smile, ready to pump gas for you. Those were the days. It looked like a place from another era. Right then it looked like salvation. I eased onto the off-ramp, but the car started to lurch, little jumps, like it was coughing on bad air. I pressed the gas gently, coaxing it down the long, sloping ramp. There were 2 lanes coming off the freeway, and I was in the right one. The stoplight at the bottom was green for us, and I figured, if all else failed, I could put it into neutral, glide right through the intersection, and into the station's lot. But of course, that's when everything began to unravel. Again. The car ahead of me decided to take its own sweet time. I glared at his bumper, willing him to move faster. Come on, move! My foot hovered over the gas pedal. I could feel the engine's final gasps. And then the light ahead turned red. My car shuddered once, then died. Dead, as if it had sighed and said, "I'm done." Total silence from under the hood. I coasted forward and rolled to a stop at the front of the line, the red signal glowing like an unblinking eye above me. In the rearview mirror, and to my left, a string of cars began stacking up, engines idling, drivers watching, all waiting for the light to change. Ahead of me, 4 lanes of rush-hour traffic on a one-way highway shot past me like a raging river, moving to the left toward another stoplight just downstream. I sat in the middle of this mess, my hands frozen on the wheel, my mind whirling. When the light turns green, what do I do? I was trapped, sitting in a dead car at the end of the off-ramp, helpless at a major intersection. Cars on the busy highway streaming past me like I didn't exist, and cars piling up behind me, anxious to get through the next green light. The gas station, the only oasis in sight, was just across the highway, so close. I could practically smell the rubber hoses and oil-soaked asphalt. I prayed for help, quietly, urgently, not some long poetic prayer, just a desperate whisper. Please, I need help. There was no bolt of lightning, no booming voice from the clouds, but the growl of cars lined up behind me grew impatiently. So I did what I had to do. Slipping the car into neutral, I took a deep breath, opened the door, and stepped out into the chaos. The pavement felt slick beneath my shoes. My windows were already down, so I braced one hand against the frame, the other on the steering wheel, ready to push as soon as the light turned. It was heavy, really heavy. A mid-70s boat of a car, steel from bumper to bumper, and I was trying to push it slightly uphill, across 4 lanes, over a road crowned in the middle like a miniature hill. I glanced behind me, hoping someone, anyone, might get out of their vehicle and lend a hand. But all I saw were tired faces behind windshields, some annoyed, others impatient, most just wanting me to disappear so their commute could continue. The light in front of me suddenly turned green. I took a big breath, leaned in, and pushed with all my might. My shoes skidded slightly. The car began to inch forward. I gritted my teeth, determined to get it across that intersection before the green turned back to red and traffic from the right started pouring across again. And then I heard it, a voice, clear and unexpected, cutting through the noise and my rising panic. "Need a hand?" I looked through my open window to the passenger side and saw him. A guy about my own age, maybe a little younger, in a faded t-shirt and worn jeans. His long brown hair caught the wind like a flag, and his eyes sparkled with something I couldn't quite name, like he knew how this would all turn out, like he always knew. Yes, please," I said, thanking my lucky stars that someone had probably jumped out of a nearby car and bothered to come to my rescue. Without another word, he nodded and placed both hands on the open window frame. We pushed together, the car groaning like an old beast reluctantly waking. Behind us, a line of impatient drivers waited, engines revving like angry hounds. The drivers on my left roared by, hoping they'd make the light. As soon as we moved just enough out of their way, those right behind me peeled off with a screech, barely glancing back. But we were moving, slowly. The gas station was closer now, only another lane and a shallow incline away. But that driveway looked like Everest, with my heart hammering and the car completely out of commission. My rescuer glanced over, caught my eye, and flashed a grin full of reckless confidence. "Almost there," he called over the din, his voice somehow calm, almost amused. We pushed into the far right lane, off-ramp traffic screaming past just inches away, with drivers and passengers staring, frowning and muttering behind windows like our struggle was just an inconvenience in their perfectly planned commute. The light was ready to change again, and now the pressure was really on. My muscles burned, the car resisted, my lungs protested, but the stranger just kept pushing like this was nothing. And somehow, we moved forward and onto the driveway of the station before the light changed. There were a couple of other cars idling on the lot as we pushed mine into the station, ending up next to one of the pumps. I didn't need gas, not really, but for the moment it was the safest place to stop, a place to catch my breath. I glanced over at the guy who had appeared from nowhere and quite literally saved the day. He gave a simple nod, no big deal, like he did this sort of thing all the time. I climbed into the driver's seat just long enough to slip the car into park. When I stepped back out, ready to thank him, he was gone. I blinked and checked around the back of the car. No sign of him. Not by the pumps, not near the mini-mart, not even crossing the street. It was like the wind had picked him up and swept him away. An attendant walked over, wiping his hands on a rag. "Hey," I said, glancing around, "do you know where that guy went?" "What guy?" he asked, confused. "That guy who helped me push my car in. Long hair, t-shirt, tennis shoes, and jeans." He looked around, scanning the station. Nothing. Didn't see anyone. He cupped his hands around his mouth and called to another worker across the lot. "Hey, you see someone help push his car in?" The other man glanced over mid-squeegee and shook his head with a shrug. "Sorry, buddy," the attendant said, half laughing. "You sure he was real? You need gas or something?" I barely heard the last part. My eyes were still sweeping the lot. It was big, but not that big, and it was completely open. There was nowhere to hide. There was no way that someone could have vanished that quickly. My brain tried to piece it together. Maybe he had a car here already, saw me struggling, helped, and drove off while I was inside my car for that moment. But I would have seen it. Maybe a friend was already waiting nearby and picked him up. But there was no one here, no other cars, nothing. He was just gone. And suddenly the gas station felt quieter than it should have. Who was that guy? I've named him Stan. About 2 years ago, my wife and I had two of our grandkids in the back seat when we all decided to stop for some ice cream. It was one of those blistering summer days, the kind where the air shimmers above the pavement, and we had the AC blasting as we joined the long line of cars snaking toward the drive-thru. As we waited, I noticed a young guy off to the right, struggling to push his dead pickup truck into a nearby parking spot. Cars in the lot zipped past him. Some drivers glanced his way, others didn't even notice. People came and went from the shop, but no one stopped to help. Then, without warning, a memory surfaced, clear as day. Stan. What would Stan have done? I turned to my wife and I said, "I'll be right back." She raised an eyebrow but said nothing, used to my sudden impulses. I checked the frozen line of cars in front of us, slipped the car into park, and hopped out into the thick summer heat. The AC had made it bearable inside, but out here the air pressed down like a heavy blanket. The young guy looked up as I approached, one hand still on the driver's side of his stalled truck. His face was flushed, his t-shirt soaked with sweat, and there was that same look I must have worn years ago, half frustration, half hope that someone might stop. "Need some help?" I asked. His surprise melted instantly into relief. "Yes, please." We both got into position, hands flat against the hot metal. It took effort, real effort, but together we inched the truck into an empty spot along the fence. When we finished, he turned to me beaming. "Thanks, man." I gave him a quick nod and jogged back to the car. Just as I slid into my seat and shut the door, the line began to move again, as if the universe had paused, just long enough to let me do this one small thing. Maybe I was that guy's Stan for a moment. Maybe that's how it works. Maybe we're all supposed to be someone else's angel when we can be. One hand reaching back, another reaching forward. As for my own encounter with that mysterious figure all those years ago, I don't remember what happened after that. I can't say whether a mechanic on duty got my car running or if I even made it to that all-important appointment. It's all a blur. But what I do remember, clear as sunlight, is the smiling face of that guy in jeans and tennis shoes who showed up when I needed help the most. Someday, when I get to that final line we all cross, the one that leads into eternity, I hope Stan will be there waiting for me. He'll flash that same quiet grin, eyes twinkling with that secret knowledge, and ask, "Need a hand?" And I'll say without hesitation, just like I did all those years ago, "Yes, please."